Hello, dear Homopedia family. Many believe that luxury is defined by addition. More marble, more gold, more volume. But in the realm of the modern Spanish farmhouse, this belief is a fallacy that leads to visual chaos. We contend that true luxury is actually the result of radical subtraction and the seamless dissolution of boundaries. When an entryway screens for attention with ornate detailing, it creates a psychological barrier, a jarring stop rather than a welcoming flow. By stripping away the unnecessary ornamentation and focusing on the continuity of materials, we replace ostentation with quiet luxury, proving that the most profound statement a home can make is one of silence and material integrity. The visceral disconnect of a sterile foyer shatters the rustic warmth of the Spanish exterior, creating spatial friction. We resolve this dissonance by treating the threshold as a sensory gradient rather than a barrier. Sun-warmed terracotta extends inward, cooling under soft plaster arches, while the tactile grain of oiled oak bridges the transition. This alchemy dissolves the conflict between shelter and nature. For more insights on curating timeless, quiet luxury, please like and subscribe. The first friction we encounter is the flooring transition. Standard design dictates a hard stop between outdoor paving and indoor flooring, creating a visual severance that shrinks the perceived space. We resolve this by specifying a single, high-quality material, often a tumbled limestone or handmade terracotta that runs from the front courtyard, under the door, and into the foyer. This continuity acts as an unseen hero, tricking the eye into believing the interior space is an infinite extension of the outdoors. However, using rough outdoor materials inside introduces a problem of comfort and cleanability. To mitigate this agitation, we treat the interior stones with a matte, penetrating sealer that preserves the raw, tactile aesthetic while providing the necessary stain resistance for a luxury home. The solution lies in the finish, not the material change, allowing us to maintain that critical visual thread without sacrificing domestic practicality. Verticality often presents a conflict in Spanish farmhouse renovations, where standard ceiling heights feel oppressive against the weight of rustic materials. We address this spatial friction by utilizing vertical timber beams to draw the eye upward, creating a sense of volume that counteracts the heaviness of the stone floors. These are not merely decorative. They serve as directional guides, subtly pointing the visitor toward the main living areas. The door itself is frequently the greatest point of failure. A lightweight, hollow core door betrays the promise of the architecture. We insist on solid, reclaimed oak or walnut, often 3 inches thick. The weight of the door creates a moment of deliberate physical engagement, a heavy push that signals the transition from the public world to the private sanctuary. This tactile resistance is a crucial element of the luxury experience. Lighting in these spaces often suffers from the glare bomb effect of overhead cans, which flatten the texture of the walls. We pivot the atmospheric approach by eliminating direct overhead downlights in favor of washed light. By placing fixtures near the floor or concealing them in cove details, we graze the walls, highlighting the imperfections of the plaster and creating a mood of ancient warmth rather than modern sterility. The walls themselves present a dilemma. Standard drywall is too perfect, too dead for this aesthetic. We resolve this by applying multiple coats of Limewash or microcement. This is the unseen hero of the atmosphere, adding depth and movement to the walls that flat paint can never achieve. It absorbs light rather than reflecting it, contributing to the hushed, cavernous quality central to the Spanish farmhouse ethos. A common agitation in entryways is the accumulation of clutter, which destroys the quiet in quiet luxury. We solve this through architectural concealment-thickened walls that house hidden storage niches or flush-mount cabinetry clad in the same wood as the ceiling beams. This allows the daily debris of life to disappear, maintaining the rigorous purity of the visual field. The geometry of the opening is another battleground. Sharp 90-degree angles fight against the organic nature of the materials. We introduced the soft parabolic arch not as a style choice, but as a solution to this rigidity. These curves mimic the shape of the horizon or a cave mouth, reducing the cognitive load on the brain and signaling safety and enclosure. Hardware is often an afterthought, yet it is the primary interface between the human and the house. We reject plated metals that chip and peel, opting instead for unlacquered brass or oil-rubbed bronze that lives and breathes. The solution to the new house feel is materials that patina, recording the history of the home's use and becoming more beautiful with the friction of touch. The auditory experience of an entryway is rarely considered, yet hard surfaces create an echo chamber that feels cheap. We mitigate this acoustic friction by introducing heavy textiles, perhaps a vintage, Aushak rug or heavy linen drapery that absorb sound. This dampens the reverb, ensuring that the entry sounds as solid and grounded as it looks. Temperature shock is a subtle discomfort we must engineer out of the design. In bridging the indoor-outdoor gap, we utilize thermally broken steel glazing systems for any glass elements. This resolves the conflict between the desire for thin, elegant sightlines and the need for rigorous insulation, maintaining the visual connection without the energy penalty. The view from the entryway often terminates abruptly at a wall, stopping the flow of energy. We resolve this spatial dead end by aligning the entry axis with a focal point, a window, to a rear garden, a piece of art, or a courtyard. This through view pulls the visitor forward, promising reward for the journey and expanding the perceived footprint of the home. We also face the challenge of scale. A grand entry can feel intimidating rather than welcoming. We pivot the atmosphere by compressing the entry height slightly before releasing it into a double-height living space. This compression and release technique creates a subconscious feeling of release and awe, manipulating the emotional journey through volume alone. Color palette selection is often where the farmhouse concept veers into kitsch. We avoid the high contrast black and white trend, which feels too sharp. Instead, we solve for cohesion by using muddy, earthy neutrals, olive greens, terrified browns, warm grays that share a tonal value. This reduces visual vibration and enhances the feeling of calm. The skirting board or baseboard is a detail that often ruins the illusion of a monolithic structure. We eliminate this friction by using flush baseboards or a shadow reveal gap. This unseen hero separates the wall from the floor with a clean line of shadow, removing the clunky visual clutter of traditional trim and reinforcing the modern edge of the design. Scent is an invisible architectural element. The smell of fresh paint or engineered flooring glues disrupts the organic narrative. We prioritize natural, low VOC materials like cedar and beeswax finishes. The solution to a sterile atmosphere is the subtle woodsy aroma that greets you, reinforcing the visual promise of nature. In integrating technology, we face the conflict of unsightly keypads and switches. We resolve this by grouping controls into a single discrete brass plate or hiding them within joinery. The technology must serve the luxury without interrupting the archaic, timeless aesthetic we are curating. The transition of light from morning to evening requires a dynamic solution. We utilize a layered lighting control system that shifts the mood. The problem of a space looking good only in daylight is solved by creating a night scene where shadows are celebrated, and the entryway becomes a lantern glowing from within. Furniture placement in the entry is often a stumbling block. Too much blocks flow, too little feels barren. We solve this by treating furniture as sculpture, a single rustic console table or a solitary bench. This resolves the need for a landing pad without cluttering the circulation path, adhering to the principle of less but better. When dealing with renovation, we often find mismatched eras of construction. We resolve this by stripping back to the structural bones and unifying everything with a slurry coat of mortar or plaster. This hides the scars of the past and creates a blank canvas, resolving the friction of disjointed history. The play of shadow is as important as the light. A perfectly lit room feels commercial. We intentionally create pockets of shadow in the corners and high up in the vaults. This atmospheric pivot adds mystery and depth, making the space feel larger because the eye cannot instantly define the boundaries. Glass reflection can be a barrier at night, turning windows into black mirrors. We solve this by lighting the exterior landscape more brightly than the interior foyer. This eliminates the reflection and allows the eye to travel through the glass, maintaining the connection to the outdoors even in darkness. The final touch is the pause moment. We design a specific spot, defined by a rug or a change in ceiling height, where one is encouraged to stop and remove shoes or a coat. This resolves the functional friction of arrival, ritualizing the transition from the chaotic world to the peaceful home. Ultimately, every decision from the grout color to the door hinge is a resolution to the conflict between modern life and ancient comfort. We do not just build entryways. We curate decompression chambers. The result of this rigorous problem solving is a space that doesn't just look expensive, but feels deeply, soulfully right. The true impact of these design decisions lies not in the immediate visual wow factor, but in the sustained physiological response of the inhabitants. By resolving the spatial and sensory conflicts inherent in traditional construction, we create a home that actively lowers the heart rate. The seamless flow of Spanish farmhouse entryways, achieved through the disciplined use of natural materials and the rejection of superfluous ornament, proves that the highest form of luxury is the absence of friction. We leave the homeowner with a space that does not demand attention, but rather offers support, grounding them every time they cross the threshold. A jarring threshold severs the spirit, leaving us unmoored. To resolve this sensory conflict, we must blur the lines between scorched earth and cool plaster interiors. The Spanish Farmhouse masterfully heals this divide, using tactile continuity, rough stone meeting smooth archways, to turn a simple entry into an effortless exhale. If this study of resolving architectural tension resonates, please like and subscribe to join our pursuit of timeless, understated elegance.